it is now time for the Content Championship. Infinity War
Yeah.
versus Rogue One.
You like making these easy, don't you?
Yeah.
You
As
do.
always, 6 topics or
Yep.
criteria. Personal relevance, how well has it aged, rewatchability, story, acting, and cinematography / visuals / general eye appeal.
Mm-hmm.
I apologize. It's dirty. It's horrible. We're both gonna leave. We always do this to ourselves. We have these two things go against each other, and then we're just like, I feel horrible. Let's just put it all out there at the beginning. I adore both of these films.
Mm-hmm. Same.
The fact that the X-Men Origins Wolverine is in the next round and one of these will not be hurts my soul.
This is your fault.
Not my fault. Right. I'll get us started with personal relevance.
Okay.
Okay, so Infinity War, the pinnacle of MCU hype.
Mm-hmm.
It was part one, essentially, of 11 years of waiting and building this masterful universe that we got to uncover. And it was also one of the greatest cliffhangers of all time.
Mm.
Rogue One, however, is also the film that I stand on me wooden box and smash me tin pot screaming how it's the best Star Wars film.
Yes. It's quite a difficult decision.
What's your personal relevance to these films, Horizontal?
Like you, Infinity War was the culmination of several years of films and build up to, like you said, part one of the 2-part, where some people would even say the finale because they've stopped watching, like the end of the golden era of Marvel. That's like from watching the first Iron Man in the cinema and that year build up with the story and everything all the way to Infinity War. Like it's a solid part of my life. Rogue One relit the fires of Star Wars. um it's so hard. But I do think out of it's slightly easier for me to lean one way on this, I think, than some of the other categories. I think I would 100% lean to Infinity War purely because of how like that build up and how much it like played in. Like I lived through the build of the MCU to that point. Like it Rogue One is like reignited a love for Star Wars, but I lived the build up to Infinity War. So it kind of hits harder of a franchise, I think, at that point. I don't know how you feel because you're stuck in the middle at the moment. It feels wrong, I know.
It's really tricky because realistically, both of these films are a big reason this podcast exists.
Yes.
Because they are the best of what we love to talk about here. They are right at the very top. But I do agree, while Rogue One is a fucking masterpiece, if you take it out of the Star Wars universe, you don't lose too much to the greater story.
No.
No one was asking for Rogue One. Infinity War was the plan.
Yes.
Everyone was waiting for it. Everyone was waiting for Thanos. So when that first trailer for Infinity War hit, everyone was like, oh shit.
Yeah, culturally, Infinity War.
I don't know if we'll ever see anything like Infinity War Endgame again. That like 18 months from just before Infinity War to Endgame was
Mm.
wild.
Yeah. It'll be rare if we see something like that again.
And special.
Mm.
How well it has aged.
Now this is harder because I feel like they've both aged very well.
Yeah.
It's even. It's so.
I think
Well,
that Infinity War ages better every day. Purely because every day you've got more and more people on the internet just screaming about how the MCU's fallen off since Endgame.
where
So
Star Wars
whether
has
it
kept
actually,
being good since Rogue One.
yeah, and I mean, Rogue One still aged very well because the addition of
Yeah.
Andor.
Mm-hmm.
Rogue One has sparked better things like Andor, which has then elevated it. Whereas Infinity War's the flip side. The stuff after it can't live up to it for a lot of people, which therefore puts it on a pedestal.
Mm.
The two ways that you can age well, essentially.
I feel like Rogue One came out. It was a banger. People enjoyed it. People loved it for what it was. Andor's adding to that, and it's aging. It's obviously aged well. I feel like more people talk about how great an Infinity War was, and like as you say, with every recent Marvel thing, people are like, damn, Infinity War really was the end. And more people are realizing how much they love that era of the MCU and that ending, like the culmination of it all. That I feel like Infinity War has aged better because more people have come to the realization of how like they knew it was great when it came out and everyone appreciated it and loved the hype at the time. But as time's gone on, like it's just like, oh shit, no, that was peak. And it just raises the bar of it. Everyone respects it a lot more now because of what we've been given.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Infinity War does take that as well.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Rewatchability.
See, I lean towards like, this is an easier one. I would lean towards Rogue One.
So would I, and I think we've probably got similar rationales for it.
I can just sit and watch Rogue One and appreciate it for what it is. I don't necessarily need to watch episode 4. One, because everyone knows how that starts. Like it's just burnt into a man. So you don't need the refresher. Rogue One's it is what it is. It knows what it is. It does what it needs to. Stands on its own 2 feet. Infinity War, great film, short on its own. We know, like, we could go and watch it and, like, we don't need the refresher. But without that build up and, like, binging through the others, it doesn't hit as hard just watching it on its own. Whereas, like, you can't it's not going to feel the same rewatching Infinity War as it did that first time. Whereas like Rogue One, I can rewatch and I would say I still enjoy it the same level as when it came out.
So the thing is, with Rogue One is a gateway drug. You watch Rogue One because you can watch it by itself. You don't need to watch anything else. But then you get to the end and you're like, fuck it, put episode 4 on. And then you watch episode 4 and you're like, fuck it, put episode 5 on. And then before you know it, you're 8 hours deep and you've rewatched the original trilogy and you're like, fuck it, whack episode 1 on. And then so on. Whereas Infinity War is when you go to rehab and you've done the binge, you've watched all 20 plus movies, and you go, I need to go and touch grass.
Mm.
And just because of that, while I could probably draw a pretty damn good timeline of the MCU just from fucking memory.
Yeah.
It would still feel weird to watch Infinity War
The build up.
without some of the build up.
Mm.
Now, there was someone who worked out like I think it's like 4 films that if you just watch them 4, you can probably get away
Yeah.
with not having to watch anything else to like speed run getting to Infinity War. But when watching 2 4-hour films, is speed running getting to the film you want to watch? Maybe that's just me and you being weirdos.
No, I
Maybe a
don't.
lot of people can rewatch Infinity War, but I feel like Infinity War was special because of the build up. So if you want it to be special when you're rewatching it, you need the build up.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people look at Infinity War as the end of that period, and it's like with anything you think, oh, let's rewatch the MCU. Not a lot of people go, let's just rewatch Infinity War. Where someone's like, oh, do you want to put Rogue One on? Yeah, sure, let's put Rogue One on. Like, if it was like one of the episode films, then it's different. But because Rogue One's such like a standalone little side thing and was done so well, like it's very easy to just throw Rogue One on. I think
100%.
that's a fair choice.
Story.
Another hard one. It's so this is brutal because
Yeah.
Rogue One story, it had a very set start and point. Well, it had a very set end point of where it needed to be, and whether you forget about that halfway through the film, that's just great storytelling. But like, it has a very set end point, and you know where it's going to finish, but it does a great job at getting you there. Infinity War story also fucking incredible, and like you said, ends on like a great cliffhanger.
Gargantuan.
And it's like, but then is the story of Infinity War without Endgame also to close out that story? Like, technically, that's half a story versus a full story.
And you
Well,
need to be careful there
okay, yeah, because
because then when we eventually get to other Star Wars films and we're talking about
well, we have
episode 1 by itself, we just go, well, the story of episode 1 is shocking.
well, we did do that with episode 6. We said
Yeah.
it's
So
we
like there's a balance there. It's
yeah,
11 years of storytelling coming to a point. I think the reason it stands on its own 2 feet as a story is because it's pulling threads together and it's
yes,
weaving a pattern with them threads. Whereas Endgame, at the time, everyone was like, "Oh, Endgame's phenomenal," but then after like 6 months, everyone was like, "Infinity War was better than Endgame, though."
yeah, because Endgame's just the closer of Infinity War.
Yes, and Endgame is not to belittle it at all. The battle sequence of the MCU,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Whereas Infinity War was a game of chess. It was storytelling. It was making sure all the pieces were where they needed to be. The story itself holds up. Yes, it is boosted by everything that came before. So you do have to knock it slightly in the way we do things because of that. But you could also argue Rogue One's story is boosted by your pre knowledge of the original trilogy. The ending of Rogue One means dickle without the original trilogy.
yeah,
Seeing Leia talking to R2 and seeing Darth Vader kick down the door and start chopping up rebels means nothing without the original trilogy.
true.
But that doesn't stop Andor being peak Star Wars.
Mm. It's so fucking hard.
I think Andor is the better story.
I think so. Purely because, like, although Infinity War does stand alone very well, for the like, it kind of needs
It needs a
Endgame.
bit more than Andor does.
Yeah. Whereas Andor, it's like, yes, like you say, the ending means skeptical without knowing episode 4. But at the same time, like that ending, seeing Darth Vader, you're just like, holy shit, that was sick. What the fuck?
If episode 4 didn't exist, they could have just ended it with them all dying on the planet, and you're like, oh my god, this is a tragic ending, instead of now on to episode 4.
Yeah.
Like that film doesn't need much of a rewrite to get around the hype and like what they're trying to do. Whereas Infinity War just doesn't work without what came before.
Yeah.
But also, I think the Star Wars writing is always a lot tighter than the MCU writing.
Well, the MCU writing relies on the web that they're weaving.
Yeah.
Okay.
Acting.
Both are great. Both.
I think Infinity War might be top to bottom the best acting in the MCU. Because I think we can all agree that while the MCU does require a lot of talent from its actors, it's not the highest level of acting, which is why it gets looked down on by like the Oscars and stuff. And I don't think the actors would say it's the most difficult acting they'll do. But I think for that story and all, like we said, all the stories that are coming together and all the interactions that are happening for the first time, and all of the big names that need equal screen time, at no point did you feel like anyone was
overshadowing another.
Yeah, it was all very good, top to bottom. Everyone bounced off each other. The chemistry was great. I think it might be the best acting in the MCU.
No, I think that's a fair conclusion of that. I don't think many people would argue, considering, like you say, the amount of different actors and different stories and different points of the story that had to all be pulled together, and different like going from fighting to very emotional moments, and then like there was a range of stuff that happens in Infinity War, like story wise, that required some pretty solid acting from all parties. So
exactly that.
Rogue One, at the end of the day, it's like infiltrate place, get thing.
Oh, we're disagreeing here. It's some of the best acting I've seen. It's so good. It's just as good as the acting in Andor.
Yeah,
and
no, true.
Andor was peak acting. I
So...
can't sit here and go, like Andor might be a touch better, but I can't sit here and go that Andor was light years better acting than.
I'm like things are
Rogue
coming
One.
back to me from Rogue One, and I'm just like,
It's some of the better acting in Star Wars films because they're not trying to. Because Rogue One isn't so much about Jedi.
yeah,
There's less, and as much as I love lightsaber battles, a bit of the drama is lost once you see a grown man ignite a stick of light and start doing spins. A bit of the drama and tension does dissipate with that. Not in a bad way. It just does.
no, you like. Now, yeah, the more I'm thinking about this, the more I'm like, holy shit!
It
No,
feels more like
some of the moments in Rogue One are so fucking good.
Yeah, it feels more like a war film, like a
Yes,
Saving Private Ryan, than
space
Magic
opera.
Wizards from space.
I don't think I can give it Infinity War.
I don't think I can either.
No, I think it has.
Because I think they're both at the top of their franchises.
Yeah, and I would put. I think I would put Rogue One over.
The good news is, this next one I think is easy.
Okay.
Cinematography and visuals. Rogue One might be one of the prettiest films I've ever seen.
Yeah, and the CGI and VFX and across the board is incredible.
Don't get me wrong, Infinity War is damn good, but it is standard big budget Hollywood good.
Do you know what the
not
difference?
Genuine artistic.
The different, like the thing that puts Rogue One ahead is because Star Wars values practical more than MCU does,
Yeah.
and their use of practical with VFX, whereas MCU relies very heavily on CGI VFX. I actually think puts Rogue One higher.
So I
I
just had a quick Google. Do you know how much money Rogue One made?
probably not as much as we would like it to.
I was pleasantly surprised.
Oh, I have no idea.
Just over $1 billion.
Oh,
Yeah.
that is a surprise.
It's the second most successful Star Wars film.
Understandable.
Disney's second most successful Star
It's
Wars
not like
film.
that's not a great list.
So that's not including the original trilogy. That's
Well,
a sneaky little.
I think visually and cinematography, like
Yeah, I think this is the only easier bracket.
yeah, the way that Rogue One is shot, MCU is shot in the MCU style, like that. Infinity War is shot in the MCU style, which, like, don't get me wrong, was, as we've said, Infinity War was probably the peak of the MCU, where they had everything kind of dialed, but it's not Star Wars dialed. Like Rogue One is Star Wars dialed, and
Yeah.
there's a reason they're the kings of VFX and practical and stuff.
So I guess the real question is, who wins?
It's a good question.
It is, isn't it?
Are we even?
What do you mean?
Like have we gone even on three for free?
I think so. Yeah. I think.
Oh no!
I would
I was
say
really hoping we might have just.
our confidence in giving cinematography to Rogue One means even though we're even, Rogue One had the only comfortable victory in a single bracket.
I mean, rewatchability. We also kind of went a lot more towards Rogue One, I would say.
Yeah, I mean,
But
as
yeah.
much as it's going to break my heart, I think for me, Rogue One's the winner.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. If you ask me what film I want to watch right now, I'm going to say Rogue One.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you ask me which film I'm wiping from the face of history, though, it's Rogue One.
Yeah, because I don't want to. That's the thing. It's like Rogue One. Yeah, no, I think it has to go Rogue One because we're looking at just film here. It's like
Yeah.
we've really got to get rid of the bias of the MCU because,
Put
like
it
you
this
say,
way:
what's Rogue One?
Rogue One, you get rid of Rogue One, the Star Wars universe isn't affected,
Yeah.
but it's still our favorite Star Wars film, or my favorite, and one of your favorites.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Infinity War is not even my favorite MCU film, and it is right at the pinnacle of the MCU.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it has to be
So
Rogue
for
One then.
me, yeah, I think Rogue One is our winner. It just sucks that it comes down to this.